皆さんこんにちは。昭和6時でございます。よろしくお願いします。さて、日本語になりたいの皆さん、今日は上手になりたい昭和先生第1話勉強するの始まった。このコーナーについて僕が英語で話します。日本語はこの画面の下にありますよ。それでは let's get started. This is going to be the prologue of Make Me Skilled Showa Sensei. Before we begin, we're going to start like this. For now, don't regard me as your sensei or master, because that's going to bring a little complication to this whole session. So I would expect some humility in return, but I want you to accept me as the equivalent of you right now. Someone who's starting in Japanese language, even though I've pretty much been practicing for the past, since 1998, basically. Today first we're going to start off with something called native speaking. The thing about learning any language, and it's not just Japanese, is that, excuse me, you cannot learn a language and use the same old practices you have with how you learn English. That doesn't work. It's kind of like a cross-contamination. What really bothers me is how some people learn Japanese but not get the native speaking down. So it's basically kind of like this.
すぐにやってくださってありがとうございます。
俺の元で書いた。いいな。
お前の日本語はこんなものか。叫んだこの野郎。That's kind of retarded. Let's take this into consideration. Let's say, God forbid, there was a war that broke out between us and Japan, like in World War II. And you come in as if you're fresh from the United States or some other country that Japan had beef with. You'd be killed by now. Another problem that pretty much matches why some people sound like a bunch of freaking tourists when they try to learn the language is that, and I hear this from a lot of people, especially those who like Japanese entertainment, is that they listen only to like the Japanese theme songs of particular shows, you know, the ones with the vocals and stuff, and they sound like something out of a karaoke bar. That's another retarded concept, which brings me to my next point. Your resources. If you're going to start learning Japanese, you have to understand your resources. There are tons of resources that you can use. Let's start with structured classes. Of course, unlike some of the privileged folks out there, I never had the luxury of having a structured Japanese class because most of them require something called, I don't know, money. Some classes, the cheapest that you can get is like $30 a pop. Like $30 a course. And if you have enough money lying around, I'm sure you can definitely use that for learning Japanese. Because apparently it pays. Then you have something like, say, Rosetta Stone. I've used Rosetta Stone and it's really helped. Because what Rosetta Stone is basically immersion. And what that does is exposes you to the very language itself. Instead of just translating it, the only thing that they use as that translating source is pictures. In this sense, the pictures do the translating, and it's your job to remember. So basically, Rosetta Stone uses a flashcard system. It helps you type the language, know the syllabaries, and it also helps you speak natively. This comes to an advantage for those who have studied Japanese before, especially if they had, like, say, a book by Jack Seward called Easy Japanese, which brings me to the next part of the whole resources thing, books. Books can really help you. And sure, and for some of you who rely on Rosetta Stone a lot, that's not a good idea, but more on the whole, not relying on one thing later. But books really do help. For some of you who are just starting, it can serve as something that'll help you translate words from your native language to that target language you're trying to learn. It's really beneficial. Then you have, of course, Japanese anime, video games, tokusatsu, all forms of Japanese entertainment, including music videos and such. If you're not hitting the books or Rosetta Stone, or you're out in public, you can pretty much set your MP3 player to Japanese songs or things like that, or Japanese audio dramas and such. Then you can walk around your merry way remembering stuff that you've learned by Rosetta Stone or through a Japanese language course book. As far as writing goes, you can download PDFs that use like Japanese kana tables or kanji tables, or you can go to your local bookstore and get books that teach you how to write kanji. Because bear this in mind, if you're just starting out in that, learning the stroke order is highly important. I'll get to that later on. But the biggest problem, which I've stated last time previously, is people rely heavily on just one thing. Some people rely just on Rosetta Stone. Rosetta Stone only helps you not just on remembering things, but learning things from a visual and vocal standpoint. They don't teach you how to write the kana and stuff. Books, if you rely on books alone, is going to teach you how to translate. But knowing how some of us are, we don't use books much, and we tend to forget much, and we tend to forget a lot, and we wonder why we are having a hard time and just resorting to Google Translate or Babelfish. Those are only effective to a certain degree, and as a result, it really doesn't help matters. Let's bring other resources. For those of you who use Google Chrome, there's Rikaikun. What Rikaikun does is serve as an on-the-spot dictionary for if you go to the sites that have Japanese writing on it. Those are really helpful, and they really serve me well perfectly. If you own like a region-free console, like say the PlayStation 3, like how I own, you've seen my video on my American site. I've stated earlier that the PlayStation 3 doesn't have region lock. So with that, you can set the PlayStation 3 or PlayStation Portable or your older generation Nintendo DS's to Japanese, which will help you be more exposed to the language itself. Or you can invest in import games, which is very beneficial as well. It'll bring certain things that you've learned to remembrance. Also, there's the ultimate ingredient in learning Japanese. Now, I want you to pay attention. This is the biggest end-all be-all solution to learning a language. It's called diligence. If you practice every day, if you expose yourself to certain things that are related to what you're trying to learn, then it's going to be a lot easier. The stress will come off the stress will be the equivalent of a pillow on your head. おかしいですね。よっと。So, with that being said, you have to understand that cross-contamination between languages is a bad idea. 2, don't rely on just one resource. Rely on everything as a whole. And 3, stay diligent on it. I made it a resolution. Well, there's only one New Year's resolution I decided to make public, and that is to be fluent in the Japanese language by learning every day. By using Rosetta Stone every day, playing my games in Japanese, watching my favorite anime or tokusatsu in Japanese with no subtitles. And I know where some of you are thinking, but we need the subtitles, but not every subtitle is accurate, whether you're watching fan subs or watching something from a legit DVD or so. Ultimately, don't just rely on one thing. Use everything as your resource. As one of my college professors put it, always be resourceful, especially when you're learning a language. Well, that's all I have to say on the whole subject. This ends my prologue. このプロローグの終わりですよ. So, if you have any questions, 質問があるなら、メールして、コメントして、 この画面の下にありますよ。それでは小6時です。次回まで。じゃあねー。